Welcome, everyone. Here we are on Sunday, September 15th, back here for Unit 4, Lesson 15. And so welcome to Awaken Your Inner Genius. We have our esteemed panel here today who's continuing to pour love into this world and a world much need of love. So before we begin our lessons tonight, we want to just pause for a moment. Invite you to just take 60 seconds with us. We'll be tuning into some ocean sounds. And I have a suggested breathing technique for you as we go into our meditation here today. As you tune into the sounds, I would encourage you to do a 5 beat of an in breath and a 5 beat of an out breath. So I'll walk you through the first one and then encourage you to do this for the entire minute. If you'll breathe in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Notice how your body feels. Tune into the ocean sounds. And take another 40 seconds and ground yourself where we are today. Remind yourself of the universal heartbeat. Finding that still place within. Knowing that there's a reason that you are with us today. When you are ready, if you would, please open your eyes. The ocean sounds are compliments of our very own John Bonzel. And John, you are quite good at these sunsets. So that was a sunset?
That was a sunrise. And if I could just make a quick little point, when this begins, and if you watch closely, it took about 20 seconds for the sun to rise high enough to actually hit the sand to where you see the reflection of the sun on the sand. So that's pretty good. Next time you watch it, just kind of tune into that. It's wonderful.
Will do.
Oh, yeah, you can't see it growing on there. That is beautiful.
Love that.
Growing. Oh.
So we want to welcome everyone here tonight. We want to take a look at where we are and encourage you to invite your friends to join us here. We've been having lots of comments from people who are tuning into the broadcast. And here we are. And here's a look at September right quick. Here's a look at September. And right now we are here under Lesson 15. Lesson 15. So if we'll bring that slide up there. And so what we're going to do is we actually there on September 29th, so we have one more next Sunday, September 22nd, we'll have the Q&A. And then we have decided on September 29th to give everyone time to prepare for the path ahead, to read ahead for Unit 5. So we'll be taking that Sunday off so everyone can use it for some much needed reflection time in preparation for our big unit in October, which is Unit 5. Just to remind everybody as we get started here tonight, why are we doing this? And so as some of you have been joining us now, this is our 18th episode. Panel, can we have a celebration for that? Quite an achievement by everybody that we've been so dedicated. Why are we doing this? I wanted to remind everyone of this, that one of our favorite quotes from Walter Russell, and it is this one: mediocrity is self-inflicted and genius is self-bestowed. And the whole idea of what we're doing here with the Awaken Your Inner Genius is we are focusing on just 2 areas of Walter and Leo Russell's work. The first is The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, as you will see pictured on the next page. You'll see it's a small little book. That's a great on-ramp to the work. And then where we're really focusing is on the home study course. If you'll take a quick look at the picture on the next thing. And for the month of September, wanted to remind you all that there is a $50 discount on the home study course. And we now have the availability for you to be able to sign up for the home study course for just $25 a month. But when you take a look at this next quote, I'm going to ask John if you'll read this next quote, because this was one of the things that really drew me into the Walter and Leo Russell work.
You know, it's interesting you bring this up because I was speaking to my beloved Karen about this morning over a cup of coffee. And I was saying that not even God himself can violate his own natural laws.
Mm.
And so that's kind of neat. So, you know, if you wanted to count on something, if you wanted to count on somebody, you know, the big guy is not a bad guy to fall back on because he won't let you down.
Well, there you go. So since our teachings are based solely upon natural law, they are not in variance with any religious beliefs and are therefore universally acceptable. We have people from all races, nationalities, and creeds among our student body. And as we continue here, before we dive into the lesson, if you'll take a look at the next image, just wanted to show you a couple of things here as we're showing everybody why we're doing this, because we wanted to remind you that the next 12 lessons, okay, these are the whole 12 units, will be devoted to giving you a more intensive comprehension of the higher knowledge of God's invisible universe and your physical relation to it. And one more, Jim, if you'll read this next quote, I think it's one of my favorites. If you're on mute, if you'll read this next quote, that'll be great.
Thank you. If you can read and count to 9, you can master the secrets of the universe. And it truly is that simple. You'll
Love
come
it.
see it. Yeah.
Great
I
power.
thought, Kimberly, I thought you were going to add to that. If you can unmute your mic and read and count to 9.
There you go.
Well, I thought you were gonna correct him because he said it wrong. I'm kidding.
So if you can read and count to 9, you can master the secrets of the universe. Great power and that kind of simplicity there. And if you'll take a look at the next 3 slides, just wanted to remind you that this is an outline of the home study course. You can pause it when you have time looking at this later, and you can see all the subjects that are covered in these next 3 pages because it is comprehensive. So we want to say hello, Christy. Hello, Lisa. Hello, Margie. Go ahead and flip through those. James, thank you so much. And so here we are, everyone. I know you're working to catch up, and the extra day and extra Sunday in September will give us a chance to do just that. We did think before we dive into this particular lesson 15, based on some of the feedback that we received from people, that it would be helpful to go back to just a little bit of a refresher to lesson 14. So let's take a look at this on the screen. Hello, Deborah. We're so glad to have you with us here. Happy Sunday to everyone. So as we're continuing, I wanted to remind everybody about this particular quote. In vain do we build the city if we do not first build the man. Karen, I know that one resonates with you in a special way.
It really does. Because you know what? If you don't educate, if you don't build the mind and you don't explore and you're not into the creativity, then what are you putting into that mind? And there's always choices of what to do. And cultivating a civilization with art and culture and education is critical to educating a society and making one that's civil to one another.
And that's certainly going to be what we talk about tonight as we talk about character. Hello, Deb. We're glad to see you, and Elaine Parks from the USP in West Virginia. Linda, hello to everyone. And so just a quick reminder for any of our new students, if you look at this next particular image here, we want to just remind us that as we are building in there, this is from 277 in lesson 14, unit 4, what we talked about last week. But I've asked the team to help us do a quick refresher. So, Jim, what is the undivided as we look at this next image?
It is the pure white eternal light of universal one. We embodied are limited in our range of vision to somewhere between 15 and 18% of the 360-degree circle, as John and others have pointed out. That's what makes us see a division of darkness and light. But divinity is absolute light, and in reality, it's the one truth of all that is.
All right, thank you. And as we go to the next block, Ken, what is the divided?
The divided is the beginning of the formation of a product or an idea. God must divide God's self in order for us to have this 3-dimensional universe. So that is the beginning. Once we've divided, so you could call that male, female, you could call that left, right, you could call that expansion, compression. And that's when you've now created 2 opposing forces that are trying to become the other, which creates all energy and all friction in life. is those two units you're looking at are each trying to become the other. The male's trying to become the female, and the female is trying to become the male, or compression is trying to take over expansion, and expansion is trying to take over compression. So they're each, and that's where we get all the energy and all the motion. Our universe is literally friction, two opposing forces trying to become one.
Okay, thank you very much. And John, if you would quickly share, what's the next one? The United.
You know, I thought I was listening to Dr. Russell there for a moment. Wow,
Oh,
Ken, that was well done.
Thank you.
Very nice. The United. So this is the final product. This is the sequence of which Ken was speaking of. So once that sequence is complete, now you're back to zero. Now you're back to the undivided. Now you're back to mated pairs. And those mated pairs are acting as one entity, one unit.
okay. So thank you. Wanted to remind everybody of that. Also wanted to have you take a look
I have one thing I wanted to say on that. I wanted to ask John, actually. Remember that a couple of weeks ago we had that question about what are the four stages that every planet, sun, earth goes through in order to manifest itself? Can you does that make sense to you there, John? That question, you remember that question? I think Darcy asked it.
Well, I think the simplest answer, to keep it brief, is the drawing on the screen. There's no exception to that sequence, whether it's the macro or the micro, whether it's the insect or whether it's a stellar system. That sequence that is on that screen is absolute. So don't get caught up in distance. Don't get caught up in space, and because space is relative.
Would that be like, another question is that would be like the sequencing coming in would be the harmonics coming in where actually you have a thought and it makes manifest and it has to go through a certain channel of manifestation or seasons?
Can I just make a point? You see where it says 4++?
Yeah.
So if we were plucking the string on a guitar or a violin, only at 4++ is the sound audible. Those three stages to it, you do not hear.
Okay, so I wanted to make sure and have that up there for everybody and remind you of this next image. Keep this in mind because as we build on each unit, these things will come back. So John, this is a continuation of what you were just talking about with the United, correct?
Yes, so this is just a numeric representation of what that previous thing was, and the Russells are just simplifying it for you.
I thought this was really made a lot of sense to me when I first was studying the home study course to see how it all happens. And so I wanted to go to this next image, and this one is actually in Unit 10. So we'll be going deeper, but we have seen this a few times now. The actual image is on Unit 10 is on the left, and then Karen Elkins colored the one on the right. And John, they give you credit, Karen, so you get credit for coloring this one. So I'm going to hand it over to you. That's what the rumor has that's been passed down to me. But John, you actually had a kind of an epiphany this week of an easy way to explain a very important lesson out of this before we dive into lesson 15.
Yes, now this is very important for everyone listening and for my panel. We're going to repetitively hear expansion and compression, and you heard Ken speak about that eloquently earlier, and that's all there is. So I have just a bottle here, a plastic bottle with a cap.
Let's go to John.
And I wanted to just simply share with everyone. So when I'm going to open this cap, I'm going to open this bottle, right? I'm going to twist this counterclockwise and the cap comes off. All right. Now that counterclockwise motion is female. And let me give you the attributes of that, right? So female is blue. It is centrifugal, outward winding. It is expansion. It is cold. It is outward bound. Now watch this. So now we're going to go clockwise on this. And what happens is, so the bottle and the cap pull each other together. So that clockwise motion is the male, is the centripetal, the compression, the hot, the inward. All right. Now, so let's let's talk about a bar magnet for a moment. Let's have two bar magnets, just kind of envision them here, right? So you got North Pole, South Pole, North Pole, South Pole. So when you have two North Poles facing each other on a magnet and you can't push them together, they're repelling each other, that counterclockwise motion is the stream of force that is happening. So no matter how you do it, they are not going to come together. All right. Now take a North Pole and a South Pole and do it clockwise, and you'll see they pull each other together. So what man terms as magnetism really isn't magnetism. It's all an electric flow of one motion, but it's seemingly two. So I was just trying to simplify the audience and everyone, because we're going to talk about this 10,000 more times before we finish Unit 12. But if you could get those basics,
Okay.
now, it will really help you, and try to find examples in your own personal lives of
Well,
that. You stir your coffee, right? And you put your cream in there and you stir it.
Mm.
Right? That's
the drain on your plug on your toilet, the drain on your shower.
That's it. So anyway, it's very simple.
So I want you to keep that. I want you to keep that, John. That's important. So hold that up, and I want to go back to that particular image right quick before we go into lesson 15. So what we're striving to do, all of our experienced Russell students here, is they're striving to make these things as simple. So you were tie that what you just shared, John, with the image that's there on the right.
Right. So if you look down the lower image, right? So the cap, we'll say the cap is the blue, is the female. We'll say the bottle is the red, right? You can see it. So if we go clockwise, right, it's going to pull them together. Those two will come together. But if we go counterclockwise, all right, they will push away from each other. Okay. Now, let's apply that to human relations. So we talked about this. Science says opposites attract. That's bullshit. There's no such thing. All right. So the more compatible someone is, or two people are, is the clockwise rotation of you bringing each other together, of like-minded thinking. And then the opposite, the arguments and everything else, and the fighting that takes place, is the counterclockwise motion. And there's no way you two are going to come together. You know, I mean, you could with some work and understanding, but most people don't have that kind of understanding. So anyway, simple but true.
All right. So what we want to do is I'm gonna make an offer here for everyone who's listening, both now and in the future. If you see any everyday examples of the things that we're studying here in the home study course, remember we showed you the acorn, we've shown you Jim has the seesaw, John now has the bottle. Anybody who finds something simple, if you bring it to us and bring the idea to us in our conversations, we're going to continue to show each other how this is actually happening in our everyday life. And I will offer, by the way, to ship anybody who comes up with good examples from the next few weeks all the way through the end of October, we will ship you a t-shirt. So that's of extra motivation. So if you come so inspired to say, how are you going to bring this to life? Then let's make that a kind of an interesting concept. John, great illustration for us. Thank you. All right. So Miss Bonnie says, I was wondering what it might look like to explain this to a divorce lawyer. Yeah, that'll be a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, but he won't answer you until he gets that upfront fee.
Yeah. He'll just say, a great question. We'll keep probing that one.
Okay. And Deborah says this, given this explanation, is the feminine principle that created the feminine principle that created the initial separation?
No.
All right. So
male and female separated is the action or the reaction to the action of the division or desire to create. But male and female do not create. They eventually come together and void each other and return creation to creator.
All right. Now,
they come into fruition simultaneously, correct? They come in simultaneous. They're not opposite. They're sequential.
Right. If they center that concept with love. If love is not present, then it's explosive. That's how you end up in front of the divorce.
Now that needs to be a t-shirt. If love is not present, it's explosive. That explains the world here today. John, last comment before I get us going on lesson 15.
All right. Ken Pearson will appreciate this because the scientific answer to you say it was Karen's question?
Deborah.
Yeah. Deborah, I'm sorry. I'll give her a quote from the Universal One. The first impulse of creation is a male endothermic compressive action. So once that breaks the line of inertia or the equatorial plane, simultaneously is born the magnetic female blue expansive part of the wave. So that way back, you know, about the woman being born from the rib of man.
Yeah.
Well,
no.
Not bad. 2,000 years ago, it's a pretty, but that is basically, if someone really understood that, that is what's happening. So anyway, I wanted to give her the correct science answer out of the Universal One.
All right. Well, so there's a lot I could say about that, John, but we'll continue the conversation for another day. So the reason we slowed down, please, for everyone who is new to the work, we were just landing some of those basic concepts again, because you're going to be surprised at yourself as we go through the rest of the units, that as you are integrating more and more of this, and you actually are absorbing more than you think because you already know these things, we're simply reminding you of the things that your soul knows, that these things will get easier as you go along. So why don't we go ahead and dive into lesson number 15 here today. And this one is all about the need of character, as you will see there on the screen. And so
I love this topic.
I know you do. So Ken, I was going to ask you to please read the first paragraph there as these lessons progress.
Sure. The need of character, lesson number 15, the need of character. All these lessons progress. We deeply feel our responsibility to you who are seeking to awaken the light of all knowledge and power within you, and to the world of men who are seeking to build a unified civilization, which is only possible when man as a whole shall have found that light within himself. Should I keep reading or stop there?
You can read up another sentence or two, but and go on to the top.
I can share on that. I think that's I don't mind coming in on that, and that's what we're doing right here, and that's what these lessons are all about. Is about realizing that the light is within, and that light we're talking about is your character, the character of who you are. We call it also a countenance, which is another way of saying the spirit within. That character radiates whether you say a word or don't say a word, by your lack of smile or by your gregarious smile, right? It's all about character in life. People don't judge you on what you say. They judge you on what you do. It's all about character. And long ago for me, and the reason that this is so important, is I had to build a new character, because the character that I had brought to the table at 30 years old was a character that I didn't want to be. I was confused. I didn't know how to be anything different. I didn't know there was an option until I was taught that I needed to build a new character, and that the character that I had brought into my life was an injured character with an injured mind. And therefore that I had to start looking at my own value system, my own moral compass, and start to realize and understand, how do I apply these spiritual principles to build character? And we just kind of heard a little bit about it here earlier before we had gone live, which was talking about being mindful. When we say mindfulness, what does that mean? Mindfulness means to be aware of my garbage thinking, but it also means to be mindful of my creator within in everything that I do. Now, the things that make up each and every one of us is a thought, feeling, and action. And so the character that I am is the actions that I take. We read that in a couple lessons ago, that we are the sum total of our actions, not our thoughts, not our feelings, but our actions. Now, I found out for me that my thinking leads to my feelings, and my feelings lead to my actions. So the thought life is very, very important. And that, again, comes back to character. Are you a good character? Do you smile at people when you walk in the store? Do you drive on the freeway and let people get in if they need to get in, or do you cut them off, or do you hit your brakes when they want to get by you, or do you do things like that? Do you count things in the line? So for me, this is all about character. That's what this home study course is about. It's about awakening your highest form of character of who you are, which is to awaken the God light within, so that we walk moment by moment in that light as best we can, as mindfully as we can.
Well, so I want to just pause for a minute. Ken does not know I'm going to do this here tonight, and I'm going to have a little surprise here for the panel. But we had an interesting discussion he and I had this weekend, and it talks about having that light within. And there's a moment when we all remember when that light was inside. So I wanted to treat you all to a flashback of Ken and I in middle school. So we're going to.
Uh-oh.
So this is important, and I wanted to bring this up there because we both were talking about how that light, and I want to ask everyone who's listening here tonight to think back to when you were in middle school. So we both have memories of this being one of the last times that we remember really tuning into that light inside before the world dimmed it. Does that resonate with anybody?
Absolutely.
So I just thought you all would get a kick out of that, just seeing this here. And Ken, I wanted to surprise you by doing this because I also wanted to mention, this whole course is about this whole idea of illumination. And you would have had an illumination also at this age. But I want to remind everybody who's listening before I ask him to comment, do you remember that time for yourself where that light was so bright that the world had not yet dimmed it?
Yes, I remember it so well. I had gone to a church camp, and I had been going there about three years. I think I was on my 4th year. I was 11 years old, and I had resisted the idea of accepting Christ in your heart because it was kind of a sheep thing. I felt like it was sheep. People were just kind of following the pack and doing it because it was there to be done. So I was, as my rebellious self, I was a little resistant to it. And then I remember my last time that I was going to be there, which would have been the 11th year, that I was told this would be my last experience at the church camp. And so I thus decided I was probably going to do it. And then I got called out by one of the counselors to do it. And something blew up inside of me. A light came on, fireworks went off inside of me, and they lasted for that whole year of my 11th year. It lasted. I was mindful of Christ 24/7 for a whole year of my life. Matter of fact, that picture is the first haircut I ever got was after that picture. That was my first haircut in life. So that was a very transcendental time. But that mindfulness had helped me to be smarter, to be more athletic, to be more present, to be I think that John said it, the difference between mediocrity and genius is about that much. We are so close. You are so close to having everything you want in your life. It's hanging on. It's just staying with that belief and realizing it's about the character that I am. And so therefore it was a very important time in my life. It went away in my 12th year, but I think it set the course for what was to come, and here we are today.
Well, and Karen, do you remember those awkward middle school days of way back then?
I was trying to really reflect back in the middle days. We had I had moved. It was a new school. It was new kids, and I was painfully shy. And most people did not even know who I was until maybe 8th grade, when my mother dressed me different, which has nothing to do with being enlightened. It just had to do with and then people liked me better. So it was a very weird time for me. As I said before, I've gone to 13 different schools before I graduated high school. So this was just, this was actually not a bad period of my life. But yeah, and I met my friends that I've had since forever. But yeah, I wouldn't say it was anything spiritual.
Well, and it was just one of those moments that's the last time I really remember still having a really bright light before the world pretty much dimmed it. And so I wanted to go in here and go to the top of 282, and then I'm going to ask Jim to comment, please. As we go here to the top of 282, it says this. It says, we can give you the key to the door of heaven, but it is for you and the world to turn the key and enter the light. That key is knowledge. Notice how they have it in all caps. For ignorance alone keeps the man imprisoned within his body and compels that body to ever walk the treadmill of a physical existence under the lash of its slavery. Jim, you have a comment before we continue to scroll down that page?
Well, that's the gift of seeking that knowledge within is what frees you from that slavery. And it's a process and it takes time, but just starting on the road is all it takes. Just start on the road. Do the best you can. I do need to point out here that unfortunately there will be no pictures of John and I in middle school because it was the dark ages and there were no cameras. But
I wasn't going to bring that up, Jim, but that's okay. So, we'll do what we can here today. So we'll scroll down a little bit farther on the page. I would like to have us cover a few more things before we take our first break here. There's a lot of really good content in this particular lesson, and it talks about, scroll up just a little bit, James, and that paragraph above it, it says that the world is grossly ignorant of its greatest essential, character. So I want to ask everyone right now, do you agree or disagree that we have a world that is lacking in character? And so as we look at your comments there, Walter and Leo are saying we are building a criminal or moral world of fear and how do I say that word, John?
Licentiousness.
Thank you. Thank you. Because our concept of values is material. The soul which ties man to God is not only allowed to sleep, but is forced to sleep by a civilization which is forever trying to gain the whole world at the price of losing its soul. I thought that was incredibly poetic way. And this was published in what year, John?
1951.
All right. So think about this. Think about that, Jim. When we go all the way back, I mean, they would be mortified if they saw where we were today in many ways, and excited.
Well,
I think
they knew very well where we were heading.
Sure.
And they also knew that the awakening would pick up momentum too, and that will stop many from falling into that dark age that they spoke of. It will not stop all, but it will stop many, and those many will be in a position, many, in my opinion, many lifetimes down the road to help lift those that fell behind. So no one's lost in the long run.
Love that.
I think character is everything. Character is everything in business. It's character in your personal life. If you're not having a sense of integrity in what you do and how you operate, and you don't understand that what comes around goes around, you're going to be on a treadmill that you're not going to like. So I think integrity and a deal of a handshake. When I was younger and started my own business at 22, it was a handshake. People wouldn't even conceive of doing that anymore. That was your honor.
Mm-hmm. I miss those days, Karen. And if anything, I tell people now too, we're in a world now that automatically assumes guilt, which is why we are so wrapped up in so much legalese. And I believe that we are going to be swinging back in our lifetime to a point in time where we are going to, someday, I really do believe there's going to be like an integrity meter where we walk through, like when you walk through the airport, you get to go through TSA to make sure that you, have nothing that's on you that's dangerous. I really do believe someday that we'll have this integrity meter, or else it's going to come within our bodies immediately, where we're not going to be able to fool people anymore. And I, for one, look forward to that. And I also believe that that's part of why works like this is so vitally important, so that we can train our brains and train our minds and our hearts and discipline it in the way that we think, because that's going to be incredibly powerful. So Ken, I wanted to ask you, if you would please, to read 1 and 2 as we scroll down here on the blue, because it says, stamp these words upon your consciousness with a die made of the strongest steel.
Yes, it says in there, the most important thing in life is what you do to your neighbor. The least important thing in life is what your neighbor believes. You want me to read the first 2, correct?
Just the first 2. So I wanted to comment on neighbors right quick. So let me brag on Ken for just a moment, because it's been really something to see for a while. He's new over here to the East Coast, and he knows more neighbors on the street than I've known living here 2 years. And so it's been remarkable to watch him live this. And so I wanted to ask everybody in the comments, if you would, how tied are you in with your neighbors these days? And I want to give a kudos to my mom, who I know is on here. I grew up when she would take me to the welcome wagon. Do you all remember what a welcome wagon was? Yeah. It was an association that you would every time somebody moved into your neighborhood, you would go and you would visit them. And so as a child, she would take me to the door when she had baked something or brought something, and that was a value that she taught me very, very early in life. And so we've lost that art in society, and I find it very, very powerful. That's why I wanted to pause on 1 and 2. because Ken, you take that very, very seriously. I'll have you comment before I go to Deborah and Rebecca's comment.
Yes, I do. I think it's so important. Attitude is everything. It really is. And if you got a bad attitude, people can pick up on it nowadays quicker than ever. I think that what you were talking about, Kimberly, in terms of the TSA machine is actually called intersensory perception. And that Walter and Lale refer to it often, that as you start to embrace this course and as you start to embrace these principles, your intersensory perception will grow and blossom as you start to connect more to the God within instead of without. Looking up on that ceiling tile and seeing if God's on the ceiling tile. I always figured I had to get up on the roof to see God, because everybody always went, "Oh, God." And the reality of it is this message is all about God within. And what we heard in the beginning of this lesson was, and John said it, is that God can do no more than what man can do. God will do no more than what man can do. And that man has the capacity to do what God can do. That's what that messenger 2,000 years ago said, that we are all sons and daughters of the Most High. We are all of the light and of love. And so therefore, shedding that light and that love, I think, is one of the most important things. I used to have kind of more of a tough attitude. I came from the streets and so forth. But as Kimberly said today, I just love people. I'm fascinated by them. And I'm sure it is the God light within me that loves to connect to other people. And I do love connecting to people. I think people are the most important thing we have in life. I think when we leave this world, we're going to leave with the people we've loved, and that's what we're going to leave with, and everything else will stay behind. Certainly those cars and houses aren't coming with us. We know that. So it'll be what's in our hearts.
Well, so Bonnie says, to me, everyone is my neighbor, following through with that, Ken, even if they are grumpy. And Bonnie says, and I treat them in kindness no matter what. So I absolutely love that. I wanted to scroll back and share Deborah's comment earlier, and then we're going to be taking our first break. And I'm going to ask John to read number 3 when we return. Deborah says, it feels to me that the character, love the way you put that in all caps, Deborah, we don't miss that, has seemingly been lost because of the misdirection and faulty programming of the ongoing evolution of our culture. We are going to talk about that here in the rest of this particular lesson. And Rebecca chimes in and she says this. Rebecca is a graduate of our Russell experience there at the museum. She says, I believe I am here because as a young child, I considered anything I didn't want to reflect back at age 30 and regret choices I've made. Even though I've had some hiccups along the way, I remember hearing, be a true blue subconsciously as a child, which maybe is character. I don't know what a true blue is, but maybe one of you know what that is. Maybe she'll give us some more an indication of that. Okay, so a lot more to talk about here, but we are past our 30 minutes. So let's begin with our first 3-minute break. Excuse me, that was a slip. 3-minute break. Everybody stand up, get some oxygen. We have a lot more to go. This is a fabulous lesson. See you in 3.
Yeah, we do.
Okay. We're off. I'm off.
The music will come on. Enjoy your 3-minute break. All right, those 3 minutes go by so quickly. So quickly, but we hear from many of you after the session, and you appreciate these 3 minute breaks. So it gives everybody a chance to take a break as we continue here. And so, John, I'm going to have us go ahead. We still have a lot to cover, so I'm going to pick up the pace for us a little bit. At the bottom of page 282, I would like you, please, to read 3 and 4.
3 and 4. All right. Very good. He who gives of himself to his neighbor enriches his soul and builds character. But he who takes from his neighbor seals his soul in its tomb and enslaves his body to the world treadmill from which there is no escape other than the awakening of his soul. Number 4, the most important and noble attribute of man is character. What are world institutions which are endeavoring to build a stable civilization doing about the building of character in the world?
So if you'll stop there, John. So I wanted to bring all of our attention to what we are healing from over the past 4 years, because we actually have a society now, and I've been seeing this so repeatedly, and when I'm with programs around the world, where people went more into isolation. COVID actually forced us into more isolation, and people got out of the habits of having connections that they had done before. People became more scared of each other, more suspicious of each other. I had a group of young career folks, 200 of them the other day, that they've never shaken the hand of another individual because their career started during the days of the pandemic. So we literally had to get comfortable shaking hands again. And so I really wanted us to pause for a moment, because I think unconsciously, the collective, we have inadvertently sealed ourselves in a tomb where we are suspicious and we have walked away from others. And so I encourage all to think for a moment and say, where perhaps may I step out of that and begin to connect to others? Does that resonate with any of you?
It does with me. And if I may say that it was not the name of a disease that was the problem in 2020. It was fear.
Sure.
It was fear of our neighbor, fear of something that could happen to our individual bodies. At that point in time, I was active in the world. I remained active in the world. I went to and from without a face mask unless I was literally, it was commanded of me to go into a facility. I showed no fear. I would talk to people, and anybody who was willing to stop and talk to me, I would openly talk to, and I would respect the people that chose to live in fear. The secret to life is to not allow any circumstance to push you into fear. Instead, flip it 180 degrees, and when people are falling into fear, your thoughts should be every day, what can I do to serve and love them? And you'll be amazed how you keep people from going overboard into fear if there's just someone out there shining the light of the opposite direction.
Yes.
It's going to be okay.
All right. I love that, Jim. Very, very well said. So I'm going to move us along here on page 283. And they go into talking about the things that have not built the civilization. And so they talk about education. I'm going to have Ken end up reading that section about religion in just a moment and have John comment. But education, it talks about, is entrusted with the unfolding of mind awareness, which alone unites man with God. The primal necessity of education is the building of character in man through giving him knowledge of the arts and skills of man's produce and of the interchanges. And it continues to go on. And then it explains that we actually are stuck in an era of remember and repeat instead of geniuses who think and know. So we've spent some time talking about that with education. And so if you would, Ken, just read that section about religion, and then I'm going to ask John to comment on that.
Religion is entrusted with bringing love into the world in order to unify mankind into one world. Religion is the most disunited organization on earth. It consists of over 400 disunited sects who are divided one from another by unnatural pagan beliefs in miracles, superstitions, creeds, dogmas, and doctrines, which have bred disunity, intolerance, fear, ignorance, and licentiousness.
Close enough, Ken.
Licentiousness lasciviousness throughout the world for long centuries. Disunity cannot unite.
All right. And so, John, if you'll read that next sentence that's highlighted in yellow and then just comment on this, because as the former president of the University of Science and Philosophy, these were the kinds of conversations you had with people, inviting them to learn more about this message.
Right. The Christ who founded Christianity told the world of a God of love, unity, and the brotherhood of man. And I think a follow-up to that, Kimberly, is when the Russells put the Christ of Blue Ridge back on the third terrace, excuse me, at Swannanoa Palace. And at the bottom was love ye one another. That's all you got to do. It's not a difficult thing. And I think I've shared this with Jim many times, is that I think we were given the concept of family so that the day that you can love a fellow human being with the same intensity that you love a son or a daughter or a family member, then you've made it. Until then, you got work to do. So just kind of keep that in mind. It's that, because you want to have this possessiveness in that family unit, whereas when you think universal love, there's no possessiveness, there's no separation, that type of thing. Yeah. And I wanted to just add one comment, Kimberly, if I may, about character. Remember this: character is what defines us individually and collectively.
Yep.
It's who we are.
Very powerful. Say that one more time, John.
Character is what defines us as individuals and collectively. So I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ken.
No, go ahead. That was beautiful.
So when we use the term lack of character, or that person expresses lack of character, right? That means something's missing. They're trying to take from the world instead of giving it. And one of my favorite things on this subject is in The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, when Dr. Russell speaks of living a life triumphant. And if every person listening could use that, as a tool, as a guide, that each day when you wake up, that you give to the world more than you take from it. Boy, wouldn't that uplift the world in a tremendous pace.
Well, and so that's what we're inviting everyone who's here on this journey with us, all of you that are watching either here tonight or whether you're watching this in the future, is that we're all taking steps to create a more powerful and more loving world. And so, Karen, I'm going to ask you to comment as we go down here on page 284, and they talk about science. So they've already talked about education, they talked about religion, and then they went into science. And so I'll just read the section there that's in the blue, but I wanted you to comment in general. It talked about how science is entrusted with the responsibility of verifying God by acquiring knowledge of God's processes of creation and other qualities of the creator, ... I'll skip down to the blue. Instead of being the equal mate to religion, which together could lead mankind to a comprehensible God, science has severed itself completely from the responsibility of having anything to do with man's soul. So can you just briefly, because I want to keep us going here, mention your experience with science? You work with a lot of scientists. You had a lot to do with organizing the Tesla Tech Conference recently. How is it that science is missing the boat? And this it relates to what the Russell said.
You talking to me? Yeah, the interesting.
Talking to me?
Are you talking to me? Yeah, I know. Jim was commenting on the movie. Go ahead, Karen. I was talking to you.
Okay. It was so fascinating organizing. There wasn't one person who I didn't get an abstract from who didn't understand that God was the force behind their creation. And that was out of the 28 speakers, that was across the board. And that was fascinating because they all knew they had dreams. They all knew they had been inspired. And from that, these are people who are innovators. They're out of the box. They're not your common people who go to school and just learn rote. They actually go, they get inspired and they do the work that they do. And they love sharing and they love communing. So for them, it was absolutely an acknowledgement of the God within and the God inspired within them.
Wow.
So that for me, working with Tesla Tech and working and doing all the guides in the program was for me the most riveting part, and seeing that everybody that came actually had that acknowledgement generally in their lecture.
Very, very powerful. So I'm going to go ahead to skip down to government right quick, and I'm going to make this one brief, and mainly because we want to show an audio, want to share an audio clip showing just how timeless these issues are. So they've talked about education, they've talked about religion, they've talked about science, and then they talk about government. And if notice there, it says government, whose very essence is unity, does not fulfill that purpose and never has. Okay, government governs, it makes the rules. If you'll scroll down to the next page, and on 285 it says, government started as the expression of power and might of one man over all man. And in that red highlight there, it says, the lust for power has always crushed the desire for spiritual unfolding of man, which built character in him. So we wanted to share with you an audio file from Leo herself, and you may find it quite intriguing to see that what they're talking about all the way back in the 50s is still very relevant today. Tune in.
Right, that joins each and every one of us. If people really understood their oneness with each other, they would never hurt each other in the way that they do. Not only with actions, but with thoughts, unkind thoughts. And the only person it really hurts is the one who has the thought. Because unless we accept a hurt, remember in The Little Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe, someone said to Doctor, have you ever known defeat? And he said, no, I've never known defeat because I've never accepted defeat. You have to accept defeat to know defeat. It matters not what happens to us. If we don't accept it, if someone tries to hurt us, we are only hurt if we accept the hurt. But we can't be hurt if we don't accept it. But what a wonderful world it would be if everybody really lived the brotherhood of man principle. And they never will until they realize how they're all one and why they're all one. That's what I tried to give out in my book. Everyone can help. Every good book that's written helps, because one is ready for one way of giving it, another is ready for another way of giving it. Margaret is giving it with her poetry. She's giving it out in her way. Maybe some of you here are giving it out in other ways. But everyone has got to start doing something about it if we're going to keep our world at all. There isn't anyone here that could not go out and extend himself to 100 people. And you imagine those 100 people extending to another 100 and to another 100. But it's knowledge we've got to extend, not just words. Because it's only knowledge of who man is and what he is and what he's here for that is going to change this world.
Wow, as timeless today as it was then. As timeless today as it was then. And you know, we have almost 50 people live with us here tonight, and so that is very, very exciting. And so when we think about the fact that even the people that we've reached, we're almost close to 400 followers on this particular channel. We invite everyone to please continue to share with your friends, and invite them into this conversation. And Jim, just a comment on what Leo had to share before I take us to the top of 286.
She has a beautiful way of simplifying the message to humanity. It literally is giving love and service to others, and it will sweep the world. And also holding on to the concept that it matters not, she made it so clear, what your neighbor may say or do to you. It doesn't change you and your love for them. I'm not saying like. Sometimes it can be difficult to like somebody, but love is a whole different state of being. You can love them anyway. And in that love, don't express any anger or disappointment toward them. Just hear them out. Let them be who they are and then be loving back.
All right. So before I hand it over to Karen, I just want to mention something. We have almost 60 viewers here tonight on TikTok, and I want to say a gracious thank you to all of you on TikTok that's with us. We stream across multiple channels so that we can reach as many people as possible. And I want to give you all a big pat on the back here for tuning into something that is loving and uplifting and not investing any more of your time and energy into some of the other negativity in the world. Because I think in today's world, our neighbors not only are our physical neighbors, but they're also our neighbors that are across the internet. And I think that's important for us all to begin to redefine what a neighbor is. Karen?
I think that goes into exactly what I was thinking, is, but our neighbors are around the world, which is exactly that. And what I think is when we talk about the world of religion, it says to bind. And the beautiful thing is we are part of the one tapestry. But the cool thing is by when we've been able to travel and you do what you do, Kimberly, and I have, and everybody else around here, the traveling is so enriching because it's so lovely to see the different cultures and the different levels of different creativity. And I actually say, when I look at the tapestry, it's a beautiful thing. And not to disenfranchise any of it, but absolutely embrace all of the creativity that God's given to all of this creative universe.
Beautifully said. I want to go to Deborah's comment right quick. It says, science ignores the soul, our inherent light, and religion's goal is to subdue and or control it. Well said, Deborah. And that actually goes to where we're going here on the top of page 286.
I just wanted to say one thing that I wanted to add to that little bit about, the greatest act that any human being can do is to help another human being. And if you think about that for a second, it's kind of like Kimberly was talking about the neighbors. Just smiling at your neighbor is a great act. And remember, the greatest act anyone can do is to help another person. And we're all capable of helping somebody, no matter where you're at or how low you are, how high you are. We all have that ability to help somebody. So that's part of that character, is remembering the greatest thing any human being can do is to help another person. And I also wanted to illustrate one more thing that John said. I got to applaud him because I had that experience with my own son and realize, and it's such a truth, if we can love the rest of the world the same way we love our family members that we dearly love, that is when we will be in a unified world and truly arrive at that Christ conscious state, when we can express that kind of love to every human being, no matter who they are. And I'm sure there'll be degrees, but that love will always be consistently the same vibration.
Very powerfully said. When we go to the top of page 286, I'm going to keep us going for 5 more minutes before we take our next break. And it says, religion and government have persistently fought each other for power supremacy since the dawn of history. That power, which both church and state fought for, was the power over other men, and such power was always based upon self-motives. And so if you'll scroll down just a little bit and go down to the sentence where I have it underlined in red right there, the human race is still primate intellectually and barbarous physically, and that includes its institutions. If we who are teachers of God's ways and processes cannot diagnose world faults and thus help to cure them, the world will still suffer from its ailments without knowing what those ailments are. This is a very important sentence that I want to bring up to everyone, especially those of you that have the copy of the home study course. The world needs leadership, but when the church or government desires power, leadership then means dominion over men. So I wanted to pause for a moment, because leadership is an especially important principle to me, because that is what I certainly go and teach and work with so many companies. And I wanted to ask the panel to imagine with me for a moment, what does the new kind of leadership look like in the world that is based on the principles that are here in this home study course? Because right now we have a world that has not had a pantheon of either female or male leaders that are showing us this loving way of leadership moving forward. So can we ignite a vision here tonight and share? I'm going to ask each one of you to briefly share, what does a new leader living in the state of Christ consciousness look like? Karen?
It reminds me of when I started the school. And when I started the school for the kids, I created a global theme-based school with its hands-on. And what it reminds me of, when I did that, all the different cultures that came in to the school were in tears because they were acknowledgement. So when I look at leadership, I look at acknowledgement, and meeting people where they are and respecting the variety that's there. That's part of it.
Love that. Who's next?
Sovereignty of every soul. It's learning to recognize the sovereign and magnificent importance of every soul and feeding that and allowing them to give of themselves to you and become inspired. We talk about give. My God, I know I do. But we also have to be in a place to receive, because that empowers you to give more. And that starts the momentum that Leah was talking about, where you get hundreds that give thousands that give hundreds of thousands, and that's how we will recharge and reroute the world history by individual excellence and love and giving to each other.
I think it's also important in that giving mentality it is important for givers to give to other givers, not to give to takers, because takers will just keep taking. There's a lot of people that just take. And no matter how much you give, it will never be enough. So I always believe it's the giver's responsibility to make sure that we give to those that are givers that are re-giving back, not to people that just take. There's so much.
I understand where you're going there, Ken, but we also try and remember the old parable about the spring in the woods. As people come upon the spring in the woods to drink, the spring doesn't decide whether they are good or evil, whether they are worthy or unworthy. It just gives water. It gives.
I never said good or evil. I say give and take. Yeah. But I'll say this on that note, Jim, that everybody has the same amount of God within them that I have, you have, we all have the same amount. And that is the equilibrium right there, is that there's no more God in me or you or anybody else. And if you are in a low place, your place that you're in, you can come out of it at any time by connecting to that divine source. The answer you're looking for is always inside you. That's what this home study course is all about, is awakening those answers inside of us. So I like to look at just what Jim was saying in terms of springtime. Everybody has the same amount of God. Go ahead there, John.
What I think would help our audience is to know this. These bodies are very powerful things. And we look out upon humanity and we see bodies of all kinds of shapes and all kinds of colors and skin colors and so on. But if we could remember and hold on to the fact that each one of us is a microscopic dot of light centered in the pineal gland of these bodies. And when you're looking at people, try to not look at the bodies, but know that that body is centered by the same light that you are, that everyone is. Okay. And it will help you. It's like a bridge. That's a nice little bridge to get you past, the complexity of the body and the sensing and trying to put certain attributes, physical attributes to individuals instead of just seeing them as a light being, fellow light being.
So,
and Ken, I can say, I'm not saying that what you're saying is incorrect. We do have to learn how to not continue to give away our material time and possessions to people that don't yet know how to give back. I agree with you there. But in the process, we have to understand that they're where they are, and walking that line between when to give and when not to give.
Well,
it's a tough one. Yeah.
The timing of this is perfect, because that's actually where we will be going after our break, because we'll be going to the bottom of page 287, where we're talking about the axioms, and it is in fact talking about taking and giving. But before we do that, I just want to encourage everyone, as you go into this break, to take in what the panel has said, take in the fact that we are all light, and also begin to really challenge yourself to think about, what does a leader in this new age of cosmic consciousness look like? So I don't want to let this leadership issue slip away. For me, I exhibit leadership in every area of my life. I need no formal title to do so. So I want to be really, really clear about that. I've always felt that this personal leadership is sovereignty over self, and that we don't need titles. I don't need a city council title. I don't need a title of any kind for me to walk through this world living and breathing the level of leadership that I know this world is clamoring for. power. And so I invite us all to be thinking about leadership as we take this next break. Deborah, let's bring your comment first before we do so. It says, true leadership is really supporting the leader in all, supporting our God-given gifts, supporting in a shared leadership, safe and mutually honoring environment that allows for the giving of all gifts as well as the receiving of all gifts. Deborah, we could not have said it better. What a perfect ending as we go into break. Everyone, enjoy your 3-minute break and we'll continue the conversation. All right. So as we finish up our 3 minutes, all right. So we have almost 100 people on various channels tuning in tonight. It's very, very exciting. I wanted to go back to a comment that my sweet sister Ida Lubis from Indonesia has just said, and what a nugget of wisdom for us. I have such respect for Ida. Man, woman, whoever you are, if you have good character, it will change the world. So,
yeah. Amen to that.
Amen to that. Absolutely. And Jackie, who is occasionally as a guest on our broadcast here, is chiming in and watching us carefully. And she says, yes, do not walk behind me, for I may not lead. Do not walk in front of me, for I may not follow. But walk beside me and be my friend.
Ooh, love that.
Love that.
That's your girl, Jim, right there. How comes you don't have that kind of wisdom?
I'm not as bright as she is.
Yeah.
She's my morning star.
Hey, my love, I got one for your leadership here. You ready?
Yes.
True leadership, we find, depends upon able example and not upon vain display of power or glory. Able example is true leadership, right? Is to live it, not talk it, right? Too many times we hear people talk it but don't walk it. But when you walk it, that's able example.
Well, I love that. And so welcome, 7P. We see you. He says, hi, everyone. Leadership is one with vision. This notion of leadership, you'll hear me talk more about that as we go through this home study course, because I believe this is part of why I know so many people are hung up in America about when they're talking about leaders, what I see people in corporate talking about leaders, or I see people in communities talking about leaders. We come from a society that has trained us to believe that the leaders are at the top. And we have had this collective abdication of our responsibility, understanding that leadership is a personal choice in every moment and every day. We are leaders of our families. We are leaders of our neighborhoods. We are leaders of our communities. We are leaders of our countries. And if more of us actually took ownership of that sovereignty, I believe there would be less strife in the world, because we'd stop looking for someone else to solve our problems, and we would step out of the victimhood mentality that is seeped so deeply into our culture. But and John, your last comment, and then I'm taking us to the bottom of page 287.
I think this ties into what Ken read and what you just said, Kimberly. But one of the greatest lines, I think, from President Kennedy in his inaugural address is, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And to me, that is a great example of leadership, where it's don't count, like you just said, don't count on someone else to do it for you.
Right.
Pick up the ball and run with it, and you do it.
Well, and can you imagine the light that we would begin to emit out in the world if we all were walking through the world with that vibration of absolute sovereignty? And that's part of what I really appreciate about the Russell work. So to the bottom of page 287, the axioms. Jim, I'm going to ask you to read these two axioms, please, as we pull this up on the screen, because it makes the difference between taking and giving. So the bottom of page 287, right there, surrounded in yellow.
Axioms. The physical expression of unfolding man is evidenced by taking. The spiritual expression of unfolding man is evidenced by giving. Boy, does that not simplify it.
It does. So I wanted to bring attention there, and I wanted to come down to where I have the red brackets on the next page, because it talks about how the fruit of the taking principle, okay, the fruits of the taking principle are the exercise of might over right, for acquisition of power and material possessions. The fallacy of the taking principle is that what one takes from another to enrich oneself with possessions and happiness will impoverish him instead and bring him anguish to his house in the measure of his taking. The law respecting the taking principle is that the exercise of might over right by the strong over the weak will strengthen the weak to destroy the strong. The slave will always rise to slay the master. He who slays by the swords is slain by the sword. The richest and most powerful empire builders in the world have been reduced to living on rations behind barricades of armaments, lest they be destroyed by the descendants of those that they have destroyed. So very, very powerful. And I want to go down to the highlighted thing. Now, I do know, John, we will be losing you officially at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, because football is coming. So I'm going to send you a big love right now, and know that we will graciously send you good vibes as you do that. But why don't you comment for us on and read that sentence in yellow, please?
Yes, ma'am. The fruits of the giving principle are love, happiness, inspiration, and the exaltation which comes only to those who have become aware of the inner light to some extent. The law respecting the giving principle is that what one gives, he always has, whether or not he is regiven. But he who gives is regiven in kind. So there is no getting over on somebody. All right. And Jim mentioned earlier, it's important to be a good receiver as well as a good giver, because if someone wants to give you something, their intention is good. And by not accepting that, you nullify that act of kindness.
John, there are a lot of people who aren't very comfortable with receiving, and so we need to pause for a moment about this. I'm not going to mention any names, but this is something,
You receive really well. I think you receive well.
well, but I'm going to share how I learned the lesson. So back in 2009, my life fell apart. And I share that story in my own personal book, Your Lion Inside, that I'd originally written for women. But I lost everything, and I went bankrupt professionally and personally. And that time in my life, I was a very, very independent soul, and it was very difficult for me to receive. And so in the glorious way that I tend to do life in extremes, I don't do things halfway. Perhaps some of you can relate to this. I either do it really well or I fail in a really big way. But at that time, I really got to the point where I literally had no food. I was homeless for a while, and I had to find a way to accept and to receive because there were no other choices. And I learned some very valuable lessons out of that. So that's why this whole principle is so important, because I learned that when the universe gives you a gift, it's important to say thank you.
Yep.
And simply accept it. Because when you begin to understand that giving and receiving and taking, giving, all of this is tied into natural law, when you resist what the world, the universe is giving you, you are in fact pushing it away. And I found that when I would push it away, I would have people that wouldn't want to give more, or I would hurt their feelings because they wanted to give. And when you think about this, how many times have we all offered love to someone in some way, money, things, time, kindness, and yet they would not accept it? How does that make you feel when someone does not accept your gift? I'd like to ask the panel.
I'd like to chime in on that one just for a second, just because I want to do the reverse side of that coin. And I come from my own life. I came from a pretty tattered childhood and pretty broken home. And so as I grew as an adult, I would walk into people's home and be parched or starving. And they'd say, "Oh, would you like something to drink or eat?" And I didn't have the ability to receive. So no, I'm fine. And I'd be sitting there dying inside, but I wouldn't know how to say, "Yes, please. Can I have a glass of water?" Or, a nibble of a piece of fruit or something. So I didn't know how to receive because I didn't think I was worthy. So part of receiving is also feeling worthy of that receiving. So thank you for sharing that, Kim.
Who else wanted to chime in on that? When you've tried to give and someone hasn't allowed you to give, what does it do?
In my youth, that might have been an issue for me. It's not any longer. I'm open to receiving, just so everybody knows that.
You'll remember that, Jim.
Yeah. but also, when I do receive love or help from other people, the thing I've learned to do is immediately turn around and look for a way for me to re-give, no matter how small it may be.
Yes.
Good for you. Good for you. It's a good one.
Karen, a quick comment?
Yeah, I'm still in the process of learning of receiving. Kimberly knows that one. It's when I'm learning, but thank you for being one of my teachers. I do appreciate that, Kimberly.
Well, we give you love. You can receive
You
that.
deserve it, Karen. You're worthy of it. You really are. You really are a beautiful soul, and you deserve to be able to receive. You really do.
Go ahead, Kimberly.
But think about part of this issue of receive, because I used to be right there, Karen, is the fact that we have all been taught to believe that we're separate, and we're not. We're all one. So when I give to someone else, I am in fact giving to myself, and this world reciprocal is coming back and forth. And I want to bring up Deborah's comment that's there in the chat box. The law of reciprocity brings balance to our world, and that's what the Russells talk about, this whole idea of balance. And so as we finish our last few pages here, I want to keep us going. John, is it okay if I continue to page 289? So in 289, I want to read this to the highlighted section there. If you take, you are exercising primitive physical practices which will react against you. If you give, you are storing up the most valuable attributes to a man can acquire, character. And you are on the road to making the supreme discovery of yourself, which is the goal of all mankind. Is it not plain to you that the creator of forms for his ideas has distinct a pattern for the unfolding of world destiny and your part in it, as he has for an oak tree or a butterfly? Is not all creation pattern in the form of idea. And so let's pause for a moment. How many people in the world hold on to possessions? And in fact, a symptom of this possession issue problem that we have in society are all of the storage facilities that we have to store the stuff that we don't have. Perhaps others would have more if we simply got rid of the things. But because we have a holdover of grandmothers and grandfathers and generations and people who have been raised by those in the Depression, we tend to hold on to everything again out of fear, Jim, like you talked about earlier. So I encourage everyone who is tuning into the home study course to ask yourself, where is the fear lurking? Where is the fear lurking? Is it fear of not appearing independent? Is it fear of not having enough? Because I have to tell you, for the past several years, and John saw this when I came in and I was offering to assist the University of Science and Philosophy, I stopped being worried about fear and I simply gave and gave. And I gave in a way that has given me so much abundant love and so much opportunity. And for some of you that are on this broadcast, you've been in my life here for a number of years. And so my life is incredibly rich with the gifts that are given back to me. And I wanted to just hone in on over here on page 290, and then I'll ask the group to comment. It talks about how in the highlighted sentence there, it says, these mystics, prophets, poets, creative geniuses of the arts, and wise sages are what they are solely because they have been transformed. They have transformed themselves from knowledge inspired within them directly from God, instead of acquiring only the simulation of knowledge through their senses. These are the messengers of God, or the divine, however you determine them, to man, who give all they have and enrich themselves and the whole world by their giving. And I want to read one more thing before I ask the panel to comment. Scroll down to the yellow brackets, please. And it says this. It says, the more they give, the more they have to give. And God's law works as surely for them as it does for the lily in the field, which gives no thought of reward for its perfume, and it will work equally for you in the measure of your awareness of the light of your divinity. Wow. Comment from the panel as we get ready to finish these last 4 pages.
Can I jump in for 1 second before you? Just 1 second. I've loved very much the input of the listeners. I'm particularly loving the input of was it Deborah Emanuel?
Deborah. Mm-hmm.
And it reminded me to look up that word, and Emmanuel means the gift of God. So how much she has lived that in her statements tonight. Thank you, Deborah.
Love that. John?
I think that lily example is a great example for every human being. The lily gives all that it has to give and asks for nothing in return. And it is only the light within you that can sense that beauty from the smell or the color of it. So isn't that a great example of character building right there?
It is.
Right? To give, not to give to get, but to give to get, because God's laws of balance will always refill your cup. So no matter how many times you empty that cup, it will always be refilled.
Well, and I want to remind us all that the title of the home study course here is Universal Law, Natural Science, and Living Philosophy. And so every time that we walk through nature, may we marvel at all that is being given to us, all of the greenery, all of the flowers, all of the beauty of wherever you are in the world. That is one of those gifts. Any other comment? Miss Ida, as I get ready to go to Karen, we're worthy of it. I like it, Ken. Give help to others. It's a must, and receive. We are worthy of it. I love it. Karen?
I just, when I think of Beethoven and Leonardo and what is mentioned in there, when you live in the flow, there's no shortage. It is living in the flow of the abundance of the creativity, and you're able to it just flows through you, and that is the ultimate joy. It's just
go ahead.
Go ahead, Jim.
And being ever aware, and I have learned over the years, and I'm getting better at it, of understanding that and I just lost the thought, so we'll move on.
It just
Yeah, I just want to read this one line from 289.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ken. 1 second. It's what John pointed out that your cup is always being refilled. You can't empty it fast enough unless you make statements or thoughts that says, "I'll never get ahead. My
Right.
cup is empty." That negates the ability to receive. Always be open to receive, and then as it comes in, give.
You know what that reminds me?
Let me go to Ken right quick, Karen, because Ken was next, and I'll come back to you.
Yeah, I wanted to just say, for me, as I was living life and coming up, I realized I was a taker for a long time. So, I don't think it's something that we naturally take on. It can be a byproduct of our environment. But I learned to be a giver instead of a taker, because a taker is empty. And I love this line here. It says, if you give, you are storing up the most valuable attribute a man or woman can acquire, character.
Yeah.
Powerful.
This is all about.
Karen?
It just reminded me when I was 22 and I started my own ad agency, I remember being so nervous inside, like the little butterflies would come. And I'd always say to myself, how are you going to get the next idea? How are you going to get the next idea? And then over the years, you just learn to relax. You're working with people. It's their ideas. It's your ideas. It's a flow. And when you're in the flow, there's never a shortage of what is meant to be at the moment. And you just be with it and let it evolve. And without that, I would have never had the courage to do what I did. And I had it for 23 years. So yeah, it's just being in the flow.
Beautifully said. So here, as we begin to wrap up here at the top of 291, it says this, and this is what John referred. John, if you'll read this last section here in the yellow brackets, and then you are welcome to go as we give you your time back for football. What is that one thought?
The one thought is that every illumined messenger ever born to earth for the purpose of uplifting the moral standards of man brought only one message, and that could be put into these words: love ye one another.
Go to the next sentence, though, because I thought that was an important addition.
Their teachings were limited to telling people how to live to manifest the love principle upon which this universe is founded.
And we'll be talking more about that through the rest of the course, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. And so as we begin to wrap up here, as for everyone who's listening tonight, we will end by showing the visual journey that Karen has gifted us. But I again, at the page 293, it mentions a couple of things. At the top of page 293, it goes back to that particular sentence. It says, "In vain do we build this city if we do not first build the man." And so as we scroll down, it says, before you step into, down you'll see where I have a number 1. It says, before you step into the later units of this course, we would ask you to go back to the past units and fix 2 thoughts in your mind. One is that God only gave one word to man for his needs, the word balance. All right, and then scroll down to number 2. And the second one is this. The other thought is to ask you to give deepest thought to the word unity and realize what that word means to you, to your physical and spiritual manifestation of God, the creator, the divine in action, whatever is important for you to be able to say that. And so as we go down to the very last page here, and that last highlighted part, and please know that we've said we cannot read everything that's in the home study course, but we are here to simply give you inspiration and invite you to do a deeper study. It says this, and Jim, if you'll read that sentence that's highlighted in yellow, please.
Likewise, every transaction in life is between pairs, and the pairs must balance with each other in order to become united.
You'll continue.
Will you take this thought into every moment you can give to meditation, for it is the biggest thought in all civilization. If you can master it, all else will be added on to you. Wow. I do not recall that one, and I've been through this course many times. That's lovely.
You know, that's what the interesting thing. Part of why you will see the panel encourage you all to get your own copy of the home study course, and is because, I mean, I carry this with me when I travel. I always have a unit with me. I have for 3 years now since I found it, and I find that you continue. 7P says balance. Is that like abracadabra? Actually, it's a scientific principle within the works, 7P. So hang with us and we'll talk more about that. So continue on this journey with us. But what I find so powerful about this work is that it does not take down other people. It is not demeaning to other people. It is uplifting, and it refers to the divine in lots of different ways that can speak to people's hearts. And so as we wrap up here this evening, we have reached the end of our official session. Miss Ida says, love you guys, beautiful people. And Miss Ida, we would say the same to you and Karen and all 100 people that are on here with us and all the views here tonight. We are going to wrap up and show you the visual journey that Karen so lovingly put together. It's the same one we showed last week, but this time you're going to have a deeper understanding of it. When we return, we'll have one less person, but if there are any questions, we'll answer them. And if there are not any questions, then we will simply wait for next week. John, before we show that, your comment.
I want to give a departing answer to that last person's comment. Abracadabra, alakazam. Try to find balance in your life if you can.
Ah. Well done. Well done. And so for everyone else, this is the visual journey that Karen gifts to us as we continue our study with each unit and spend a few moments in meditation as you enjoy this beautiful gift. A beautiful gift from Karen as she pulls that together. Karen, thank you so much for the precious gift that you give us each. And it just is helping so many people's learnings as we go along. So a few things that I wanted to mention to the audience as you put in any questions that you have here for this evening. Thank you for staying with us for the whole time. It's been an incredible conversation. Bonnie says, thank you, panel and Karen. That was beautiful. Love that, Bonnie. I wanted to mention an event that's coming up. So if you'll take a look here at this particular event, I've mentioned this a couple of times, but the University of Science and Philosophy is hosting their homecoming event. It is the last weekend of September, September 28th and 29th. It is called The Secrets of Universality, The Secret of Universality. I need to take off that S. And tickets are also available by Zoom. I'll be helping to MC the event. And so any of you that are able to come, or if you want to just join us on Zoom, feel free to. I also want to ask James if he would. I've asked him to pull up two things. We partner very closely with the University of Science and Philosophy. I have an office there, and we'll have a new studio that'll be going live there in a few weeks. But I wanted to ask Jim if you would please comment on something that Leo Russell talked about, the Age of Character clubs. And as you're talking, I've asked James to just pull up that particular link and show where we are listed under you and Jackie.
We were lucky enough when Leo came up with the concept for the Age of Character clubs to be chartered as the group that we had in Newcastle, Delaware at that time, led by Howard Hall, to be the first chartered Age of Character club. The Age of Character clubs are designed to give people in their communities the ability to start a charter and do good works within their community via the Age of Character club. Now they can do good works without the Age of Character club, but it helps bring like-minded people together, much like a PTA or a Lions Club or so many of the other ones of that nature. So she just wanted to give the opportunity for people to be able to charter these clubs and do work in union with the university to spread this message in their own communities.
Well, and we're delighted to have Awaken Your Inner Genius there under Jim and Jackie, because they were one of the original charter members. So that was an exciting thing to think about as well. So thank you. And James, if you would, before I go to Anna's comment there, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about what is available for people at the Awaken Your Inner Genius channel. Our tech producer will come off from behind the scenes and share with everyone a little bit about what's available. All right, James, you're on mute.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Here's our YouTube channel. So you can see we have a ton of resources, and we're adding things constantly. One of the main things, aside from just the show that we have, which we have built into a nice little playlist, I'm setting up Unit 4. So if at any time you need to go back to some of the previous lessons and you need a refresher, you can go all the way back to our very first episode. And if you're new to the show, I do advise you to go back to at least see a few of these first intro lessons here. And then if you want to, you can go back through all 17 episodes that we've done. And we also have a live meditation here with the ocean waves, as well as a lot of other short form content and longer form videos and Karen's incredible visual journeys, which we'll also be putting into playlists. So a wealth of resources here on YouTube for you.
All right. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. And so we'll bring up Anna's comment is if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat box as we wrap up here. Anna says, thank you so much again, beautiful people, for your time, love, and sharing your wisdom. And so as we're waiting for a few comments, Ken, I just wanted to ask you right quick, why is it that you invest your time doing this every Sunday night? Because you are one of the ones who was the inspiration behind this entire idea.
Talking to me?
Your turn. Talking to you.
Talking to me?
I'm talking to you.
You know, I have been, God has helped me to awaken that which is inside of me, laying dormant for so many years. I kind of had a sordid childhood, so I was definitely thinking I got served up a bad dish of life. And you know, I realized that it wasn't about being served up a bad dish of life. It was about the way that I was looking at life and the dish that I was served. Instead of looking at what I could do with it, you know, it was easy for me to get into a victim mentality. So For me, long ago, one of the greatest lines I've heard, I said it earlier, is the greatest thing that any human being can do is to help another human being. And I started doing that 30 years ago. And nothing lifts oneself greater than to lift someone else up. I think is the greatest joy is to watch the light come on in someone's eyes, to help them to realize they already have the answer inside of them. Many times you realize the answer is the right circumstance and the answer will come out. Everything we're looking for is inside of us, which is so hard to believe because we can get to that low level. Our energy and vibration can sink to a low spot, like Kimberly was talking about, when this outer world can be really hard and callous on us. But it's always important, we get these principles that there's nothing in this three-dimensional world that can ever hurt your soul. Nothing. It is an illusion. Your soul is never hurt by this three-dimensional world.
We're having a little bit of problems with your connection.
The thing that gets hurt by this three-dimensional world is your physical vessel.
All right.
That's more current.
I think your internet is tired, Ken, because it's trying to fade out on us. We're only getting every other word. So we know you're sending us lots of love here. As we wrap up here, a final comment from Jim and then Karen, and I'll say the final words as we have no questions here tonight. Jim?
Well, my reason for being here is to share this message. That's all I've wanted to do in my life since the days that John and I were at the university with Mrs. Russell, is just re-give this message that brought so much light and love into my life and really carried me through those times when, like you, Kim, there was a time when I was literally forced out of a job and a home at the same time. And I was living in a car with my 4-year-old son, my pregnant wife, and we had no place to go. And I just went into total belief and faith that this is going to be okay. Never doubted it would be. And we found a way out. So,
wow.
Don't give up.
All right. Never give up. Miss Karen?
And for me, I do this because I know it's enriching my life. I think we always go through stages where there's always that extra piece. I would familiar with the Walter. I've never done the home study course. So for me, this is actually listening and being with you guys is like awesome. And it just enriches every step. So thank you for the invitation, Kimberly.
I love that.
Ditto.
Love that. So Bonnie says here, I pray continually for awareness. When you know better, you do better. And Bonnie, there's so much truth to that. And Leo would say that this particular home study course is an illumination, one word at a time. 7P says that Ken's energy was too high for the infrastructure. So maybe that's why your internet was going out, Ken. And there's some truth to that, 7P, as I'm with Ken a lot. And Karen says, thank you all again. Karen Mahan, so many belly laughs, and thanks, Jim, and thanks to Miss Linda. So to all of you, we hope you join us back again for next week. Next week, we will be on lesson 16. We will be finishing up unit 4. And so a gracious thank you to you all. It is truly our honor to be here with you. Feel free to invite someone to join us next week, and we will continue the conversation and the journey. Much love to you all. We won't say goodbye. We'll say until next time. Bye, everyone.